Hi, everyone. This is Faisal. I'm the founder and CEO of Pi Labs. Delighted to be speaking to you all today. I'm actually in the middle of the Welsh countryside. I was on holiday at a farmhouse with my family. I was told that I'd have great internet connectivity at the farmhouse, so I went along, thought I'd just kind of sneak off into another room and give this presentation, then go back to playing with the kids. But actually, I found out my internet connection was a bit low, and I was freaking out yesterday. But I've now driven over to a hotel about 40 minutes away from my countryside farmhouse, and here I am to present to you a little bit about what we're going to go through today. We'll be covering an introduction on Pi Labs for those of you who are not familiar with us. We'll then talk about the research white paper we've done on this topic of the future of work, which is my key focus for today's discussion. And I'll be ending with some case studies of companies that we've invested into from our portfolio that have been really pioneering at the cutting edge of the future of work, even prior to the pandemic that we're all experiencing. So a bit about us, about Pi Labs. We're a London-based VC firm investing in the future of our built environment across Europe. Our mission is to digitalize and transform the real estate sector with every investment that we make. And we act as a gateway, really, between the traditional real estate sector on one hand and the emerging tech ecosystem on the other, providing our partners and our LPs access to the latest thinking, trends, research, and technologies that are shaping the future of the real estate and construction sectors. And what we really pride ourselves on is this connectivity that we bring to our startups as well as to the real estate companies that are behind us. So, we're the most active investor in prop tech companies in Europe. We've been investing since 2015 as Pi Labs at the rate of around 10 new investments each year. So we're now really pleased to have reached 50 investments, key milestone for us that we reached earlier this year. And our companies really span the entire life cycle of prop tech and all types, touching all types of real estate sectors. So technologies and innovations for offices, for retail, for residential, and all subsectors of real estate as well. And I'll talk through some examples as we go through this presentation. So today's focus is on the future of work. And as I mentioned, we've just published a white paper that's been 3 months in the making. We started researching this around March when the pandemic hit us and hit the rest of the world. And we decided this was a topic that was well worth diving deeper into. So it's a 30-page plus research paper. You can go to Pi Labs' website and download it. And I hope you do take the time to read it. There are some very useful insights in there. But in a kind of, if I were to really just simplify it and summarize in one sentence, we've found, our research shows that really the future of work will prioritize a couple of key things. And that's flexibility, health and well-being, sustainability, community, transparency, and digital services. And I'll try to dive into each of these a bit more in the coming pages. So the pandemic has forced companies to rethink traditional workplace models and challenging the way business leaders think about their real estate assets and the very purpose of the physical office. And in many cases, it feels like a decade or more of technological adoption has taken place overnight. So going through like some of our findings one by one, our first finding is that remote work or a more flexible model of working is here to stay. However, it won't spell the end of the office, regardless of what you're hearing from a lot of the doomsdayers. The second insight is that flexible and co-working offices, contrary to what you're hearing or reading about in newspapers or the property journals, will actually emerge stronger from the short-term crisis as more and more corporates opt for flexibility in their portfolios. And the focus of our spaces will switch to increasing the quality of office interactions, particularly as we're going to see a much more hybrid approach with some workers working remotely, others in central HQ and others dotted around in flexible and co-working spaces around the city and globally. Thirdly, and importantly, employee health and wellness is now at the center of corporate strategy, and COVID-19 has been a catalyst for that. And a number of different measures are being taken to create a workplace that makes workers, employees, tenants feel safe, and technology will be at the forefront of this as well. And last but not least, the rapid digital adoption driven by COVID-19 will continue into the recovery, further accelerating the automation of services. So you can certainly expect to see a highly digitalized office in a post-pandemic world. But remote working, while the long-term effects of the pandemic are still being interpreted, nobody really knows what's going to happen. The theme that jumps out at us is that remote working has become much more widely accepted globally, really, cutting across all geographical, cultural, and socioeconomic boundaries. And some of the early signs suggest that this shift is certainly not temporary. And if you look at the numbers, which are astounding, the number of daily Zoom users grew from 10 million in December 19 to 300 million in April 2020. We don't think that this is going to go through a sharp reversal in a post-pandemic world. We think that this is a trend that's here to stay. However, it's going to be, as we mentioned earlier, much more of a hybrid work environment with remote workers and on-site workers all collaborating. An interesting stat from China that's worth pointing out, Microsoft actually saw users of its Teams platform grow and, more importantly, continue to be used in China even after lockdown measures were lifted. So leading the software giant to conclude that remote work is actually here to stay. And the shift to a more flexible model of working could have some positive impacts and effects to business, with plenty of evidence that it boosts employee performance. So 74% of CFOs actually plan to make at least 5% of their on-site workers remote. I believe this number is actually going to go up. And 85% of business leaders found flexible working improves productivity. So I think what we all need, what our research really points to, is that employers will need to embrace a hybrid model and disperse workers across multiple locations. And when you have a much bundled office where it's not centralized as it used to be in a pre-pandemic world, what you've got is a need for digital technology being the glue that binds the workplace together. Flex space and co-working is one of the areas that we dive into our research paper. And what used to be the most popular option for startups will become the norm for large corporates too. And you hear a lot of CEOs saying, well, you just don't know when the next pandemic or next crisis might arrive, and you don't necessarily want to be tied into long-term liability. So I expect a lot more CEOs and executives at large corporates thinking about decentralizing their office, having fewer long-term liabilities, and having more of a mix of traditional leases and flex leases in their global portfolio. So this, we think that this is going to be a major demand driver that will be behind the further rise of flexible space and co-working. Worth pointing out some research done by JLL pre-pandemic, and these are pre-pandemic numbers. Nobody knows what these numbers would really look like post-pandemic, but 10 million square foot was forecasted of new flexible office space in the UK that would be added to the stock of UK flexible office over the next 5 years. And their prediction was that 8.5% of total office stock would be flex space by 2023. Now, as I said earlier, these numbers now, are going to change. These are pre-pandemic, but we believe that this trend toward flexible offices, co-working, will only actually grow, and it will be stimulated by the need for corporate occupiers to have more flexibility. And as remote work becomes the new norm, firms everywhere are flipping that proposition and considering how office spaces can help attract and retain top-tier talent and tenants. An interesting piece of research by Harvard Business Review shows that businesses that heavily invest in employee experience are 11.5 times more likely to appear on employer review site Glassdoor's Best Places to Work list. So as workers and managers better grasp what needs to be done in person and what can be done online, we think the focus will switch to increasing the quality of office interactions. And we think that technology will have a lot to do with this. Part of it will be design driven, part of it will be how you use your space, and part of it will definitely come down to the digital experience that tenants and workers get when they come back to the buildings, to office buildings. Health and well-being is a major trend that actually has been on the fringes pre-pandemic. We think the pandemic acts as a catalyst to really bring this trend to the fore. And once again, citing Harvard Business Review, they say in the post-COVID world, buildings will be seen as a first line of defense against disease, and a healthy building will go from a nice to have to a competitive must have. And we'll talk through shortly a couple of examples of how tech and prop tech solutions are being used to help foster a sense of health and well-being in buildings and giving more transparency back to office workers and tenants. Bit of background around this. Poor mental health costs employers between 33 billion to 42 billion a year. So it's not a small scale problem. It's certainly one that is worth investing into and addressing. And lack of sleep, this is one of the unspoken health issues. Lack of sleep contributes to economic losses worth $50 billion in the UK each year, according to the Rand Corporation. Offices can actually help, and the design of offices and the technology experience of offices can help to address some of these issues. Well-being was already on its way to becoming a priority before the pandemic, but we now expect COVID-19 to be a catalyst and an important tool for winning and retaining talent and tenants. One of our companies, Office App, is actually releasing new features that help to monitor the effects of social distancing in offices, and we'll be speaking about Office App a bit more shortly. And I'm also going to be joined by Tice, the founder, in the panel session right after this to drill down a bit more into what is happening in tenant experience apps and how they're going to be playing a role in a post-pandemic world. And as I mentioned, health and well-being in the workplace can improve performance and productivity. This is backed up by research. Optimizing, according to a review of more than 200 different research studies, optimizing workplace and environmental factors can generate productivity gains equivalent to 30 to 75% of an organization's real estate costs. So we believe that that health and wellness actually can be a competitive advantage, and that offices in the future that have a better health story will attract the best talent, achieve the higher rents, and get more tenants. Obviously, we don't have the empirical data to back this up right now, and this is a prediction that we're making, and we're making a bet on health and wellness and investing in technologies and platforms that can help workplaces be more healthy and promote the wellness of their tenants and employees. How can prop tech help? We've already seen that gyms, breakout areas, creches are becoming more common, but the being end users. Technology can be used to address both the health of the building occupants as well as their mental well-being. So we have a portfolio company called Demand Logic, which is optimizing environmental conditions in office buildings, and another portfolio company called 720 Degrees, which is measuring and monitoring indoor air quality, which has been known to contribute to employee health and wellness. And these are the types of tools that we expect to be on the rise as the office space transforms slowly to be more conscious around health and well-being issues. But we also expect to see other more hardware technologies to boost buildings' defenses against disease, such as touchless entryways, elevator sinks, and toilet flushes. Lack of sleep, as we mentioned, is a major public health issue that is not spoken about enough. We have a portfolio company called Pop and Rest, which is installing sleep pods in offices for staff's well-being. So a couple of examples of companies that we've invested into that have been very much at the forefront of and really been at the pioneering edge of the future of work theme that has become so important. We've invested in a company called Office R&D. I believe we invested back in 2015, so one of our early investments. And as we start to see more landlords offering flexible space and co-working space as opposed to traditional leases, what they're finding is that this is actually quite operationally intensive to provide, and you need a tech backbone to help deliver all the services. So Office R&D acts as a central hub that connects to and manages all the systems that are already in place. And they automate everything from lead and member management, contracts, issue tracking, bills and payments, booking meeting rooms, and providing occupancy reports and other analytics. So as landlords start to move into the world of providing flexible space and being the operator, technology solutions as the backbone will be absolutely essential, and Office R&D is a great example of that. Another one of our investments, Office App. This is a company based in Amsterdam, but operating in countries around Europe, around 10 different countries. This is a great example of a company that's seeing a demand surge during the pandemic because they bring all of the services that are tenant-facing, occupier-facing, all centralized on one app, including facilities management issues, anything from access control to booking meeting rooms to community engagement to connecting with local retail. And one of the use cases that they've seen be on the rise is using the app to actually track the density levels of people in the buildings, because obviously, to help to facilitate social distancing, but also tracking which elevators are being used and which is not. And this brings one of the key themes from our research paper to the fore, which is that tenants are going to want more visibility and more transparency from the office spaces they work in. And these types of tenant engagement apps are going to play a key role in providing that level of comfort and transparency that will help people transition out of home working and come back into offices. And I mentioned earlier 720 Degrees. This is another one of our companies that we've invested into. They're based out of Helsinki, but operating across Northern Europe right now. They've built a very useful and topical platform which centralizes data around indoor air quality, humidity, lighting, indoor air pollution. All of these, when taken together, actually contribute to employee and tenant health and wellness. And it's a platform that provides insights and actually a wellness score for buildings. And we think that as health and wellness related to buildings becomes more and more important, platforms such as 720 will certainly see a surge in demand. And we're already hearing from this company that they've seen quite a few inquiries coming in from landlords and occupiers who are looking to provide more visibility on how healthy their building is. So thank you. I hope that was a very quick and useful overview of quite an in-depth research paper that we've published. It's not easy to condense the research in a deep dive paper in short presentation, but we've tried to do our best. And we hope that you'll join us for a panel that we're hosting, which will have the founder of Office App, Thijs, talk to us about what he's built, some of the and what was being used in a pre-pandemic world, and during the pandemic, which types of services and use cases are being used at Office App, and what role he sees Office App and other tenant engagement apps play, and how they will help workers come back into the office. And we'll also go and get the perspective of Nakash from PGIM as a landlord to see how they expect to see use technologies to make the workplace safer, and how they will use technology to encourage workers to come back into buildings. So please join me for the session. It's a 30-minute session that starts at 4:45 London time. Thank you so much for listening to me. We hope you'll stick around for the panel discussion shortly. Thank you.